So today we're going to be looking at the player's distance iron category from 5 of the big brands. And we're going to look at which ones do what and which one's longest. So we're going to start with the Titleist T150 being a really good seller over the last few years, and each iteration's progressed a little bit with more tungsten, high density tungsten heel and toe, giving stability. We've got the channel in the back, which kind of helps get a little bit more speed off the club face. In this generation, they've gone slightly more bounce, but essentially it's designed as a player's head with a little bit more ball speed from that cutaway behind the face and a little bit of a stronger flight. So with each of these test clubs, I'm going to use the same shaft that I use in my gamer set of irons. All the heads are exactly the same weight, same loft, same lie. So it's a completely even comparison across all these heads that I'm going to be testing. So, Titleist, very, very clean look. So they chamfer the top edge so it looks a little bit thinner than it is, but very classic shape. Standard Titleist from that point of view. Been a really good performer over the last couple of years. Just a good balance of a bit of forgiveness, a bit of ball speed, but without losing control of the ball. Immediately it's a very stable feel. So that split tungsten really gives it a little bit of stability off center. It just feels like the head really stays with the hit really well. The tungsten gives it a little bit of a click off the face, especially with that channel in the back as well, but feels a powerful head, really comes off strong off the club face. Just a really nice, balanced all-round head. Even that one a little bit low, a little bit heely. Didn't lose that much ball speed, so ultimately that's why it's performed so well. Those classic looks only serve to help. So next, Taylormade P770. So very simple, clean looking head. Actually, really, I think one of the best looking heads out there. This one's a hollow body construction. So unlike the Titleist, it's got that bit of a visible cavity in the back. This one isn't. So the hollow body allows them to use a thinner face material, but infill with some of their kind of speed air foam that they use. It supports the face and helps them to go a little bit thinner. Without kind of giving away some of the stability. The channel in the bottom helps the bottom of the face be a little bit faster with a bit of flexion, and again, a bit of tungsten across the bottom of the head too, so plenty of tech in this head. So this one's also been a really strong performer, something that's been around, we've had in the bay for a little while now. Generally good for somebody who picks it a little bit more. That tungsten across the bottom helps to collect the ball well, particularly for a little shallower into the back of the ball. Slightly thicker top line than the Titleist head, but again, a very simple, clean looking head, and generally one that's been a very strong performer. So being hollow body, the sound just changes a little bit, just as a little bit, have a harder note off the face, but only a little bit. Again, very, very stable off the club face there. Really feel like there's plenty of margin for error in a head that's actually still quite compact. Just dragged it a little, but again, powerful feel off the face. Really gives the feel that it kind of gets off the face fast and gives you a little bit of extra performance. So one of the most recent launches, this is the Mizuno the M13. So slightly softer frame in terms of material wise, but a lot of different materials within this construction. So we've got that sort of chromoly material, we've got a soft carbon steel forge, we've got a different back plate here. So there's lots going into this to help get a little bit of speed off the club face, but retain that softer feel that this head and Mizuno as a brand is so well known for. So again, very classic player style shape. We're going to see that with all of these heads here. Clean, thinner top line, very neat, slightly longer looking blade down behind the ball, but this one certainly expecting to have that little bit of a softer sensation off the face. But initial performance has been strong out of this from a ball speed point of view, so we'll see how it compares. So definitely a little bit of a toned down note, not quite as clicky and high pitched note off the face as the Titleist and the Taylormade. And that's really one of the differentiating factors for this golf club head, in that it's got that softer feel, and that's one of the main sort of progression points that Mizuno have made with the M13 and M15 series versus previous models. Yeah, just a very well balanced head. We're going to hear this a lot from you with these few heads. We're seeing this particular category of head has just improved over and over again, year on year. So we're getting a lot of very strong performing heads, but really stable. And with that softer feel on this, it's going to do well. So Ping i240, so you know, a model that's been so consistent over the years, a real kind of gradual progression in terms of gaining a little bit of forgiveness. There's a bit more of a cavity in the back there. It's just starting to use the face slightly more than they have in previous models, but ultimately, you know, consistency is the name of the game for this head, and that progression of forgiveness from the bottom to the top of the set, really noticeable. Just a great all-round head. So some very distinctive Ping signatures on here. That bottom groove painted white, a little bit more offset, the satin finish on the head. You know, it's very unmistakably a Ping head when you put it down behind the ball. Slightly kind of softened and rounded top line, which just makes the head look just a little bit neater, but it is noticeably just a bit bigger than the other heads that we've tested so far. Very different note. The cast construction, that pad in the back, definitely dulls that tone down a little bit. So it's a little less hard feeling, ironically, than some of the other heads, which are technically softer materials. But that's the acoustics of that weight pad in the back. But almost you could call it almost slightly calmer feel off the club face. You know there's not anything extraneous going on that's just going to jump. Just feels a very, ultimately for Ping, feels a very safe head, which is kind of what they want. I think straight away, one of the things that's noticeable and that I would expect from this head is there's more flight. This has been a head that we've used and had really good results for maintaining a bit of launch and spin. So you're potentially not going to be the longest in the test, but definitely going to give it a little bit more flight. So finally, Callaway the Ai 150 head. So again, a hollow body construction. There's a bit of a mass pad in the back there to help with the sound, but we've got that, you know, carpenter steel, cup face technology, faster face, support through the back structure, a little bit of tungsten heel and toe. So again, plenty of tech in it, but where does this come out? So one of the distinguishing factors of the Callaway is the high polished chrome that you got on the lower half of the head and then the softer finish on the top half. It's a very distinctive Callaway shape, a little bit of a rounder line, not too much offset, which is quite nice. It's a pretty classic head shape, but being a strong performer, this one, from a yardage point of view. Yeah, very distinctive sound, that little bit more of a, you could argue, plasticky note. It's got a little bit of a hollow sound to it, but definitely has a real feel of forward momentum to it, and definitely a head that we've used to bring flight down over the last sort of year or so. Having had this head, it's a pretty punchy one. Yeah, so that sound is really the distinctive thing. Maybe felt the miss hit a little bit more than some of the other heads, so that was a little bit heel side, and I could feel the head twist a little bit. Didn't perform too badly though, but more noticeable from a miss strike point of view. So like we've done in the other comparison videos that you might have seen online already, we're going to go through each club at a time and then we'll kind of compare them to one another. So I'm going to start down with the T150, the first one we hit. So you know, bear in mind, these are all the same loft, but the heads are a little stronger than what I use. So the flight for me is on the flatter side pretty much across the board. But what we can look at here is that 145 efficiency, a strong ball speed proportion, nice off the club face, so getting a lot of efficiency and some good punch off the face, which is why this has been such a popular head. Launch and spin on the stronger side, so certainly a head, you know, we've used it to bring flight down to sort of stop the top of the flight popping up too much. So if you're looking for a head to give good across face performance, good ball speed efficiency, you know, bring the launch and spin down just a little bit, T150 is a great head because there's plenty of performance off of it. You know, spin pretty consistent, obviously distance consistency very good as well. But what we can see here for these batches of shots, height at 83 feet, land angle 42, spin at 4.2. You know, I'd be looking at either trying to use a higher spin ball or adding a bit of loft to get a bit more peak height onto this. But obviously this is going to be representative club to club as we go through the test. But so a bit on the flatter side, but that's what the head's designed to do. So then moving up to the Taylormade, the P770. Now, generally speaking, I would expect this to pick the ball up a little bit more. And as we can see, we've got another 3/4 of a degree of launch versus the Titleist. Very similar ball speed, so just as good off the club face from a ball speed efficiency point of view, again, something we found with the head over the last year or so, been a very good performer. Very consistent for spin as well, so that's a nice number there, but just gets that peak height up a little bit, another 6 feet of peak height, another nearly 2 degrees of land angle. So, you know, as a head where if we're trying to gain a bit of ball speed and trying to gain a bit of height, then P770 does a pretty darn solid job for that. Now, moving on up to the Mizuno, launch and spin almost identical to Taylormade. So again, it's not too, it's more of a mid-launch, mid-spin head rather than a kind of a power bat, which again, from the construction and the model where it sits in Mizuno's range, excuse me, put my false teeth back in, that's exactly where we want it to be. You know, maybe a little bit stronger than some models have been in the past for Mizuno, but you know, again, good ball speed efficiency, and enough spin. Again, height-wise, because the ball speed's a hair lower than the Taylormade, it's almost as high and land angle's almost as high, but from a trajectory point of view, very comparable, but the focus here is going to be on that softer feel and not getting away from you. So again, very consistent from a spin point of view there as well, and say high enough, but that softness of feel off the club face is a real winner for this head. Now move up to the Ping i240. If this wasn't the highest flight in the test, I'd have been shocked. It's been a great head for keeping launch up, keeping spin up. It's not the hottest, and that's something we're seeing here. That efficiency is that little bit lower. So even at the higher club speed, it's not gaining ball speed on the other heads. Launch angle 16. So if we're comparing that to where the Titleist was, it's almost 2 degrees more launch. And I've measured and adjusted these, they're all exactly the same loft. So there's no loft change there. Spin up, 5,000. So it's the first one that's broken that 5,000 barrier from a spin point of view. So very much a head where, you know, that height retention, that control coming into the ground, you 94 feet, 46 land angle, you would hit above that 45-degree land angle mark. That is sort of a bit of a magic number that a lot of fitters talk about. Obviously, club speed has a relevance in what's achievable for you in that, but for me at sort of mid-80s for these swings, you know, I'd want to see it up around the 45 plus mark. So that head for my delivery in this test is giving me a more optimal ball flight, but a little bit less ball speed. We'll come back onto that in a moment. I'll move on to the AI 150. If this hadn't been the lowest spin in the test, I would have also been quite surprised, because that's something we've seen from this head. You know, the Callaway range of irons is pretty strong throughout the whole range. Very good for ball speed. You know, that 145 efficiency is up there with the T150, but that launch and spin is the lowest. You know, 14.5, 4.2 on the Titleist, 14.3, 980 on the Callaway there. So if you're looking for a head to bring that top down and take spin off, this is an absolute stunner of a head. But for a lot of players, it might end up being a little bit too flat. And the only issue with that is then, you know, if you don't want to play something like this head in the shorter irons and you're looking at maybe a split set, there's a massive gap to the CB head. Now, there are the X-Forge and X-Forge Max heads that have just launched as well that might help fill that void. But that's a really strong ball flight. So for high ball flight players, great head, but if you're mid to low, that one's going to bring that flight down too much. So let's switch screen. We're going to look at the dispersion pattern and go over a couple of factors there. So looking here at the dispersion screen, now there's quite a distinct pattern here, and it involves the Ping head. And whilst there's a consistency, it's a little bit shorter, a little bit further to the right. But there's one shot in particular, which is a really strong hit, which is up there with everything else. Now, what you'd have to say based on this is this just a club head that doesn't suit my delivery pattern? Because if everything else is up there a little bit longer and generally a stronger overall ball speed performance, but there's one hit that I managed to get there, is this just a case of the sweet spot position doesn't suit my delivery? However, it will be a little bit shorter because it's got more height and spin, but that shot pattern being a little shorter and to the right, that's potentially something where we'd look at the construction of the head if we're in a fitting and going, okay, is this really giving me the best performance out of everything? You know, we know it's going to be a bit shorter because of that ball flight, but if you're looking at a dispersion pattern like this, that's maybe something to question with the fitter, saying, okay, whilst it's higher, actually, can we make one of the others perform with a similar ball flight to gain that efficiency? So whilst that's quite distinct, you know, what we can see here are, you know, the patterns we can see are the, you know, the Titleist, you know, that front to back dispersion, very, very tight there. The, you know, Mizuno, a little bit more of a spread, but again, you know, similar in terms of, you know, there's one a little bit shorter, but similar overall. The P770, which is the yellows, very straight from a dispersion pattern bar one pull. It's a human swinging, so there's one over there. But there is you're looking at the Callaway, there's a little bit more of that front back. Now, for me, the scary one's actually this one at the top. That's the one that I'd look at and go, in this kind of category of head, it's the sort of player's distance. Are we really looking for that all-out yardage? Now, there are going to be some players that go, okay, well, this is the longest, I must go for that. But if you've got one that stands out that far and above everything else at the same loft, with the same shaft, with the same swing weight, with the same lie, everything the same, that outlier is a worry, because that means that's a flyer. And that's the one we go, okay, for me, long, flat and hard, that's coming in hot. Whilst long is never something to kind of ignore, you need to know what it's doing when it lands. And so, they're all solid. There's not a lot from a distance point between them, but this is where I go back to this table and we look at that, go back to the Callaway data, that spin, that height and land angle, it's coming in flatter than anything else. So actually that presents a problem from a scoring point of view, because I don't want to play to a green, land on the green and see it disappear over the back into some bunker, water, thick rough, whatever it is. That's not playable on course. So this is where those height and land angle and spin numbers become all important to utilize the best balance of everything. So conclusions would be, longest of these is the Callaway, but is that spin a little flat for some players? Softest landing is the Ping, but are you giving up a little bit of distance in playing it? However, you're not going to get those flyers out of it. And then the others are a little bit of launch angle. So the Taylormade and the Mizuno, very similar flight, but very different feel. Titleist back a little bit stronger. They all have their strengths, but we are going to see this falling down to, from a personal point of view, what feel do you prefer? Maybe a look side of things. What's the most important parameter that we're fitting for and that you're wanting to gain? So if it's height and stopping power, then the Ping's giving that to you in spades. If it's strength and distance, the Callaway's giving you that. If it's actually lower launch and retain a bit of spin, then we start looking at the Mizuno and the Taylormade. They've all got their merits, and there are going to be bits that are good for some players and bad for some players. So this is really a case of saying that there are a lot of good heads from a performance point of view. And as you'd have heard me saying in these, I get accused of not pinning my colours to the mast, but that's because each of these heads will suit someone different. I can't tell you what the best head is for you without seeing your data. But they all have their strengths, they all have potentially some weaknesses as well. It's about picking what's best for you. So I hope you've enjoyed that run through of some of those players' distance iron heads that are out on the market now. It really shows that there are a lot of good performance characteristics from each head, but there's going to be one that suits you best because of certain feel, flight, spin performance. So really dial into why one's best for your game, and that's going to be the best on course. So hope you've enjoyed this format. If you have, check out this other video we did on recent driver launches, a nice comparison across the model of the core model heads. We'll see you again soon. Just hit the like button, subscribe, and check out the rest of the content.